All right, well, we don't have an intro, but we're live anyway. So, welcome to Motorsports After Dark. I'm Jake. I have Tyler and Donnie with me. I'd point, but half of you can't see them, and the others who can, they're probably in different places on my screen. So, say
Hello,
hi,
hello.
friends.
Hello.
Hi.
Um, so, so tonight we have the esteemed Donny Nordlicht, who is first of all a friend of ours, but also has a fun history in automotive media and then PR. So I'm sure that'll come up at some point as we get into all this. But yeah, it's the Wednesday after. Let's see, we've been doing some stuff, driving some cars. I was at Tail of the Dragon for Pride of the Dragon, and then I went to Moab. I bought a shirt. I went to a really cute place for breakfast, and I bought a shirt,
Well,
which I
that's
never
fun.
do.
That
Yeah,
I
looks like the
really want to
Milwaukee
hear.
Tools logo.
yeah.
I want to hear about this Moab trip, by the way. Like, I'm very excited to hear about how
It
the
was
the Hummer EV did. Although, if you want to hold it until your review publishes, I also
well,
understand.
so regrettably, it's Wednesday night. The embargo lifts tomorrow at 10 a.m.
I was just about to ask about that.
What I can tell you is Moab was a bucket list trip for me, and getting the invite was like smash the accept button, don't look at the calendar, figure it out later. Um, and I had driven the Hummer EV truck like Thanksgiving-ish of 2022 when those came out. And the SUV is 9 inches less wheelbase, but otherwise the same. And all of the ones we drove had the extreme off-road stuff, so smaller wheels, bigger tires, skid plates, and rock sliders. And the only other fun tidbit was that they did all of the off-road engineering and testing, like validation testing for these trucks in Moab. And I
Oh,
think the
that's fun.
trails are rated, they're like ski trails where they're rated up to a certain, like green, blue, black, whatever. And they took us on, I think the highest is an 8, and they took us on 6s. So it was like very real driving. I was looking up at the sky, down at the ground. It was, I don't do off-roading, so this was like very fun and interesting and nerve-wracking all at once.
Cool.
And yeah,
Off-roading
I
for pavement people is kind of scary.
oh, it is. And
I
what's funny is I'm realizing I am learning more, and there's a point where I can't be like I'm an idiot anymore. And I think we're rapidly approaching that point of like I know it
I
just
use that
enough.
excuse every
I
time. When
Yeah,
it's,
I remember being on a Land Rover something at one point, or maybe I was just in a Land Rover on an off-road course, and everybody was like, "Oh, you've been around for a while. You know what you're doing." I'm like, one of the core things that happens is off-roading is there's somebody in front telling me what to do. Can somebody get out of the car and do that, please? Because I didn't
right.
know what I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, great, sure.
Well, so what was funny is they had a couple of the engineers on the program. One of which is the his name is Todd. I think Todd Hubbard. Super super great guy. He he's been at GM since the fall of 1988 and first worked on the Chevy Astrovan, which like
whoa.
Wait, okay,
he
hold on. This is sorry. Quick aside. This is the second time the Astrovan has come up for me today. Um,
What
okay.
this is a that?
one one of my very very dear friends, who's a former coworker, we worked together at Automobile, worked together at GM. Um, he literally wrote the book on the GM buses. I maybe have told one or both of you about this. Um, and so he has this affinity for the sort of wacko GM, I'll call them people movers.
Okay.
And he sent me a link today to one of the big car model companies. I don't remember which one. It might have been Tamiya, um, doing an Astrovan, like
Oh
original
wow.
gen Astrovan,
Uh
and
huh.
like it was. I think it was like, oh, vote on this and we'll make it. And he was like, I need everybody to go vote on this
Absolutely.
because it's exactly what he needs. This is the man who also bought me a plush Ziggy duck when I started a Cadillac.
Oh, he's the one that
So
got. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Was the
This makes a lot of
Astrovan
sense.
the one that had curtains? I want to know whose idea it was to put curtains in a van because whoever that is, I appreciated them. Or whenever that's.
I think that was all very like conversion van
Yeah,
esque,
that's true.
which was just kind of a an era where all of our parents decided that that was a really good thing.
And then it became a thing.
Yeah.
There.
So yeah. we had Todd that worked on safety for the Astrovan, which I felt bad because I actually laughed because we've all seen that crash test video from like '95 or so where the Astro like accordions on itself. He was there earlier where it was crash safety wasn't quite as stringent, so he didn't work on things at that point. But anyway, he worked on that. He worked on the Buick Verano and its siblings, it was the Chevy Cruze, and the Hummer H3 and some other stuff, and then eventually got asked to do this. But Donnie, to your point, he was getting out and spotting us for a couple things that we did. But I asked ahead of time. There was only 6 of us media on the program, and I said, "Are you going to help us through this stuff?" And he's like, "Well, the trucks are capable, and they'll do it, and you've got cameras and sliders and stuff, and like we'll get you through the tough stuff." So, like, I bent a rock slider, which, I mean, they're meant to deform, but it was a fun trip.
I will say it was wild seeing a truck that big. I know you can't say much about how it actually did it, but wild seeing a truck that big, like on Instagram and in the pictures where you can't actually tell how big it is with like all 4 wheels turned and all jacked up. It reminded me of like those like true off-road rigs that people take to Moab. Like,
Yeah.
it was wild seeing that was a factory vehicle, and
Yeah,
props to them for
and
actually.
this is not. And Clay asked, "Why is there an embargo? These things have been on sale." I think the embargo is just because they had 3 waves of people, so just so we can all get our stuff out on time, at the same time. But
levels the playing field.
yeah, but for the sake of how it looks size-wise, they're like kind of Tahoe-sized, but they're very wide.
I saw
And
one the other week. I was actually walking to a haircut and saw a Hummer SUV on parked on Park Avenue, and it's like, it's not that big. Like, the truck really looks
the proportions
big,
are funny.
but like it's so wide. It's so wide, and they use like the skinny lights in the front and then very small lights in the back. It's just like visually they make it look so wide.
Yeah, and so we were talking about because obviously the trails we were on were wide open spaces, to use a song title, but I was saying, if I got one back in DC, like all of our trails are pretty narrow on the East Coast. I don't know how that would go, and eventually we looked it up because Garrett and I took a Canyon AT4X on a trail that was like pretty hard that I think the Hummer would do okay with. The Hummer is 10 inches wider than the AT4X.
So this is the thing that I have realized somewhat recently, and this actually came up in my time hop memories recently. Just the size of cars and how they've grown, and what we like our sort of points of reference. What came up in my time hop was I got in an argument with, I think it might have been Margaret within the OMS community, over fastback SUVs and their normal SUV counterparts and the sedans they're based on, and who has the most luggage space. And so the screenshot of the Excel spreadsheet I made comparing everything was in my time hop.
A normal conversation between two gay men.
Completely normal. And it reminded me that, like, oh yes, when I think of like, a Tahoe or a long wheelbase Escalade or, a Sequoia is X size, my reference number is 20 years old now, 25 years old, which we don't even talk about the passage of time. But it's so interesting to think about that change and the points of reference, and like, garages haven't gotten any bigger, streets have not gotten any bigger, and yet cars have.
Right.
And that's like a really interesting point of reference, an interesting viewpoint. And
You were thinking sort of the same thing I was. Like, when the Hummers and Humvees first came out, like, back then they were enormous trucks, and like to have that same presence on the road, or just that same like reaction that they got back then, like everything's gotten bigger. And like, how big does the Hummer need to be for people to have that same reaction? Like,
I'm laughing because like I'm looking in the live chat right now, and Lexi is right. Roads are maxed out.
In all caps.
Within all caps. Within, obviously we're a car community. For those who don't know, I live in New York City. We are on the edge of congestion charging starting soon. I am very pro congestion charge because I would love to get people off the roads who don't want to be on the roads. And also,
Yes.
I live in one of the densest places in the entire United States. It should be hard to have a car here, and so you should actually want to. Like, we are all people who want to, and we're willing to make the costs and sacrifices for that. Like, I think that's a really important point that people can't just like easily have a car in a place that's hard to have a car. In places that are easy to have a car, it should be easy to have a car. I'm also laughing because Clay is yelling at me about how we have spoken at length about the width of cars in the past week, which is very true. We were talking about how the current T1 SUVs don't fit in your average garage.
Well, Donnie, you mentioned this a long time ago to me in some conversation. Again, normal conversation between two average gay men. Um, about how the Ford Excursion used to be so gigantic to all of us, and it's what 227 inches long, roughly,
Something like
and
that.
that is the length of a new Suburban. And you see new Suburbans, at least in a city environment, you see them all over as livery cars, family cars, whatever. I mean, I see black Suburbans all the time. And I'm just like, oh yeah, a Suburban.
Right.
But Excursions used to be larger than life.
I mean, I
So
remember how big those were when they came out,
yeah,
and it was like it wasn't just the physical dimensions, it was the way they looked, the level of aggression, the fact that they were unabashedly unapologetic about being based on a Ford Super Duty. Like, I am quickly Googling while we are talking about this. The current Suburban, according to Google, is 226 inches long. The 2005 Excursion is 227 inches long.
yes.
Like,
I can't. I just can't believe that Jake, like, you had that stored in the back of your head. Like,
I can't do
220.
calculus. I can barely do algebra, but Ford Excursion facts living up here, rent free.
it's that Eddie Bauer. It's that Eddie Bauer love.
Yes.
I have
My
a problem.
kindergarten
We all do.
teacher had an Eddie Bauer, a green Eddie Bauer Ford Excursion, and she kept it for like 15 years. Like, I guarantee you it's still in her driveway.
Wow.
She was the
My
best.
first grade teacher had a uh, facelift of the first generation RAV4 black four door that she kept for I don't even know how long. And I just like I remember her getting it because I was like maybe in second or third grade, and she like got a new car, and I was like, oh my God, it's the RAV4. It has the cool new taillights. Um, and I just remember always seeing it parked in front of my elementary school for at least 15 more years.
My parents have this story. They took me to the DC Auto Show whenever the RAV4 was like new or still a concept car. 90, 96, 97. So I was probably 8 years old. And some guys like walked up to it and said something, not to us, but just in general about, oh, there's that RAV4. And apparently I was like, excuse me, it's RAV.
It's,
So, so my pettiness knew no bounds even at
Wait,
it
7 or 8 years
started
old.
then.
Yeah.
so wait, Tyler, you must have a story like this too, because I have one like this, which is
I
we
was
were
just
at.
about to, go ahead.
Go ahead, go. No, no, you go ahead first.
No, I was just about to say auto show stories. Like, I have a very vivid like show memory in my head, and it's not even like me correcting somebody, but like it's like the thing that kicked off like my obsession for cars. Is I was at the Philly Auto Show, and I another aside, I heard some random person say, "All these cars look like toy cars," as I was standing in front of a Z8 that was in like whatever James Bond movie it was at the time. But that was like meeting my movie star, and I still remember it like on the like rotating platform, and me like
Hmm.
3 or 4 year old me just like standing in front of that platform until my father like pried me away. But yeah, that's like it's like the initial auto show memory that started it all. Anyway, what was yours?
Oh no, it was similar to Jake's about being petty. Um, I remember when the GMU vans were still in concept form, not the Dustbusters, the second gen, and they had the Pontiac Transport concept, and it's like one of these very lightly cloaked concepts, and um, I remember they had the concept out and then the production. Montana Transport, and I was like, oh, they switched the taillights. On the concept, the reverse light was on the top and the turn signal was on the bottom. And now the turn signal's on the top and the reverse light's on the bottom. Didn't you know that? And the poor product specialist was like, please get this child out of here. Like,
But like, you were the only person who walked through that entire show who noticed or cared.
oh yeah. I'm gonna turn off my camera for a second. I just got a bunch of texts saying that my air conditioner is very loud, so I'm gonna go turn that off.
Okay. While we're doing that, I have received also several texts, including one from my mother, about the demise of the Chevrolet Malibu this afternoon. For those who are unaware, Chevy is discontinuing the Malibu. And my mother texted me. Let me pull this up. She says, "OMG, they are retiring the Chevy Malibu! Exclamation marks. My cool yellow and black Chevy with the 8-track player." Because my mom had a cool Malibu in like the 70s when they were actually kind of badass. So first I had to remind her that the current Malibu is distinctly not that.
Yeah.
And
Debbie doesn't
also,
want you to say that.
well, I said it. Also, the Chevy Malibu is not racetrack proven at Out Motorsports events. So it is, I know it's dead to the world now, but it's also dead to me. Because her CVT cannot handle the rigors of intense track use.
I don't know what you're talking about because that particular vehicle that you may or may not be speaking of was simply used as transportation, and that's all.
Right. You would not know about driving one on a racetrack at all.
I actually would not know.
I actually don't know.
Yeah.
I actually don't know, but could this possibly not be something that you didn't own, that you only possibly didn't drive for a weekend? Possibly?
No, none of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
None of
no
us-
one has rented them from Avis or Enterprise.
Right.
And no one's ever put one on a racing surface, ever.
No, insurance
but if
would
they
never
had,
cover that.
If they had, I just have heard that the CVTs get a little hot and unhappy, that's all. So,
But if
anyway,
we want to talk about CVTs, I'm always happy to talk about the Murano Cross Cabriolet.
oh,
That's not in the news. I'm sorry, the Malibu is, but
it's not the news, but I mean, honestly, when is the Murano Cross Cab not the news?
I mean, nobody pointed out the fact that I'm pretty sure the rear seats fold down, so you can fit like, a container for a large musical instrument in the back of there.
That seems
Musical
very helpful
instrument.
for your travels.
I'm sure it's been done, but I would love to get a Murano Cross Cab and an Evoque convertible and have that be like the big gay comparison for convertible SUVs.
So fun fact, I've driven both. Drove a Murano Cross Cabriolet for a long weekend and like enjoyed it in the absurdity. It's like it was fun because the Murano was fine at that point. It was perfectly fine. And it just made it more ridiculous, which was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Evoque was unmemorable, but everybody I know who has had one, and oddly I know a lot of, well, gay conversation. I know a lot of people who've had Evoque convertibles. All loved them. And whenever their leases were up, they're like, I don't want to give it back. I want to keep it. How do I keep this car? And I'm like, you trust me, you don't. Just
Like you've had your fun.
Just keep
let
this
her
happy
go.
memory. Just keep the happy memory.
Photos. So I do think, Tyler, to your point, it would be fun to get both and do like the big comparison, especially now that they've aged. I know the Muranos are like impossible to get parts for if the roof starts to fail. But I think the penultimate part of the test would be building them into off-roaders and taking them on a trail with the roofs down. So maybe we can find some budget somewhere and do that. I think that'd be a great time. Yeah.
Somebody listening has to have at least one, and then we could always work to find the other. That's fine. Go keep some Jeep.
If anyone would like to
books
donate money or convertible Nissan Muranos to us, we'll take them.
Yeah, my savings account doesn't account for when the Murano Cross Cab top breaks, though, so that'll have to be built in. I heard that
Right.
it's like 8 grand if you can even find
Oh,
one.
more.
Like,
It's like it'll total the car
fun.
because they don't make the parts.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Clay said $13,000. Yeah.
Um,
Oof.
Speaking of convertibles, Tyler, you did send an article about a convertible.
I did. I tried to
Um,
do some newsy stuff.
yeah.
So apparently Toyota has been, which I didn't know, but it's also like a decade old news. They had like this three-pronged quote unquote plan that they wanted to introduce three rear-wheel drive sports cars over the course of X amount of years. And obviously the FRS or the 86 was one, and then the Supra was the other. And then the third is a collaboration apparently with Suzuki and Daihatsu that is kind of like news this week that they're actually going to release it, and that it's going to be 150 horsepower, three-cylinder Miata competitor that undercuts the Miata by like 6 grand. And obviously, the news within the news is like, are we even going to get it? Like, how awesome would that be if it actually came to the States? Number one, that it even exists, that Toyota's doing it. But then, I just really hope they bring it. Like, I feel like we need the Miata competitor. Like Miata, the ND Miatas have been like it, and everybody praises them, and now we might have the second. So I just thought it was interesting.
I'm really curious. So like I like the ND Miata. I have not. They updated it this year with like a updated differential, and they tweaked how it's programmed to respond, because every ND Miata I have driven, I have also almost like severely spun somewhere because they're very eager to lock up as you give it throttle on corner exits. So anyway, between that and me not fitting in them, I just kind of have a weird relationship with ND Miatas. But I welcome any and all competition in that space because like we need more cheap fun cars that are impractical. Not none of this like Civic Si nonsense. Those are great, but like I want sports cars, sports cars.
I was thinking that when we were talking about how big things were getting, because like I knew we were going to talk about this. Like, I also don't really fit in the ND Miata. Like I do, but like I'm not particularly like cozy in it per se. Like I don't like fit down in it, and I feel like I'm sort of sitting on top of it. And, like I'm not a tall person like at all, and I know this Toyota is going to be even smaller. So it's interesting if it does come here. Like I hope it does, but it's interesting that it's even smaller and even cheaper.
That's, I don't know, that's interesting, Tyler, because like we're roughly the same height and size and
Yeah.
build, and like I fit in an ND Miata perfectly. That said, I'm like short legs, long arms, which
Mhm.
might work well for a car like that. And I fit in an ND Miata better than I do in an NC Miata, which is bigger than an ND Miata. So yeah, this Toyota thing is very interesting, especially given the Daihatsu tie-up. I'm ignoring the Suzuki part because Suzuki's tie-up with Toyota recently has been so much of Suzuki just rebadging Toyota stuff,
Mm.
like the Suzuki Swace, which I think is a Corolla wagon, just with Suzuki badges thrown on. And they have like a RAV4 that they stuck Suzuki badges onto. Um, I'm intrigued by the Daihatsu one because like the Daihatsu Toyota tie-up brought us things like what we in America know as the Scion XB and the Daihatsu Copen, which is technically a K car. So I'm like, if this is an evolution of the Copen, it's too small for the US. It's not legal here.
Right.
But Miata size is a lot bigger than a K car, so that could be really interesting. Um,
What is that?
I don't
Like,
know.
what is too small to bring here? Like, do you know the actual dimensions? Like, what is the?
So legally, it depends. Well, I don't know if there's a legal thing, actually, to be completely honest. I know that importation of K cars varies state by state. Like New York State, you're not allowed to import K trucks. You can import
Oh,
K cars, but not K trucks, which is weird. Um, but from a market standpoint, I know things like the Jeep Avenger, the current Jeep Avenger is a really good example. It's a fantastic car. It won all these awards, like I think it's European Car of the Year. I think it's won some awards in Asia as well, potentially. It's Jeep's fully EV car. It's the only real EV that Stellantis, I think, has that's not like, oh, we stuffed some EV stuff in a ICE car. Um, and it's been very, very well received. it is smaller than a Renegade and just like would not fly here. Like people would not buy it because in North America we have like big cars, we have big roads, we have cheaper gas. So it just
Yeah.
it doesn't make the business case.
Yeah. Not even a legality thing, just business and marketing, I guess,
But if you
which
can
was
market the
unfortunate.
sports car as a sports car, as a Miata competitor, that would probably do all right.
Yeah.
And then that makes me wonder, what do they do with the 86? Because, that I don't know if there's a production contract length on the 86. I know the Supra is built by Magna, and that after model year 2025, that contract is done.
Well, but
So
that's a third party contractor because like the 86 and BRZ are built by are they built by Subaru or are they built by
I
Toyota?
think
I
they're
don't know.
built by Subaru.
They're built by the
They're built in
automaker.
a factory
Right.
that one of the companies owns, yeah.
So there
But
is
I don't know if
no
there's plans like,
well,
give it
but
5 years of this gen and what
if it's a
happens.
Miata competitor, that's a drop top, not a coupe. And
Right.
I think that's a different enough segment. I would assume so, given that, like Porsche's kept Cayman and Boxster alive for so long.
Well, and honestly, if Toyota can have like 19 different unibody crossovers, why can't they
Yeah.
have two very similarly sized sports cars?
Right. Even
Money.
three somewhat
Money.
similar sports cars is fine
Yeah,
by me.
yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it would be all right. Like it excites me because if they truly like pulled the Turbo 3 out of the GR Corolla and then made it rear drive and manual as the standard transmission and all that, I think it would be a really fun car, and probably pretty light and tossable. And they've done good stuff with modern sports cars, I think.
I'm still just so surprised that like 10 or 15, well, not 10 years ago because the FRS and 86 twins came out at that point, but like who would have thought that Toyota that that this would be like Toyota would have the three sports cars. Like
Yeah,
Toyota is
of all
now
the brands.
leading like sports car market essentially. Like they're the ones really pushing it,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
it's wild, and
never.
I mean, even when you look at other brands selling, affordable-ish sports cars, they only have one, and if they do, are they producing that many? Like I haven't seen hardly any Nissan Z's out. Um, I don't know what they're doing with those, but they killed off the Camaro. The Challenger's dead now, coming back. Got this Ice and EV, but those are big. So yeah, like I think there's room for something like what Toyota's leaking, proposing, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm all for more performance-oriented cars, especially as we head toward a world, like I was talking about congestion charge before, as we head toward a world where the people who are buying cars and driving cars are the ones who want to be doing it.
Yes,
I really hope that we have cars that we want to be driving.
same. And I'm also, someone said it in the chat too, where I think a lot of, and I hate telling people what they should think, but I do believe that if you are a car enthusiast who can really think critically about smaller living spaces, like if you live out in the Midwest on a farm or where there's a lot of space, like great. But if you live in or near a city, you should be very into the idea of better public transit and better networks and of ways to get around that don't involve using cars,
It's interesting
because it gets
because
everyone off the road that doesn't care about being a good driver.
Hmm.
um, I was about to say earlier in my career, but it wasn't actually that early in my career, and now I just feel old. Um, I got asked during when AVs, autonomous vehicles, it was like, oh my God, the hot thing. Like, I kept getting asked over and over again, oh, are you worried? Are they going to put you out of a job? Are they can get rid of all the car enthusiasts. I'm like, no. AVs are in a lot of ways similar to mass transit and similar to urban environments. They get people who don't want to be in cars out of cars so they can get where
Hmm.
they need to go without having to have a car. And then the people who have cars love cars and get to do fun things with cars. And it means we have fun cars that we drive. Um, and I think there's a lot of benefit to that. Whether or not there's a business case around that eventual future market, in 2100 or whatever it is that it happens or doesn't happen, I don't know. Um, but I think there's a lot of truth to that point of it's important to have fun cars that people who like cars want to buy.
Yeah, and I guess that point theoretically works in the enthusiast favor, right? Because then companies can focus on like, okay, this car will drive itself or just be like an appliance, point A to point B, and then they can really hone in on people who care about driving and their cars and how they make you feel, and like it can be more of the two extremes as opposed to like M3 syndrome, I guess, that needs to do everything. But
Yeah, and I mean, I know I get to drive all sorts of press loans of practical things that I can use for errands. But even if I didn't, I have my wildly impractical sports car, and otherwise I can get around day to day life on my feet and my bike and the metro. I don't need the car.
This came up actually at work yesterday. I was chatting with a coworker of mine who just moved from Toronto to New York, and I made some mention. I was visiting friends outside of the city, friends who I will not name, but she has a 2002 Mercedes C32 AMG, and her boyfriend has an 84 733i 5-speed manual that his mother bought new.
I saw this on your Instagram.
Yes.
Very hot for a car, by the way.
Oh my God. I mean, the car is kind of gross. Like mice were living in it for a while, but
we couldn't see that on the internet, though.
Yeah, no, exactly.
oh, I know who this is now. I didn't know that. Anyway.
Yes, nobody knows about that 7 Series, and I may have just spoiled something by saying it here, but whatever. Sorry. We were talking about exactly this, about not necessarily needing a car as your daily driver, the like slog of going to work, going to grocery store, going to, like, oh, I take a car out when I want to go drive and go do something fun. The kind of car you buy is so different, and it's why, for those who don't know, like the car that I have when I drive right now that I keep in New York is my boyfriend's V8 XC90. Like completely impractical as a daily driver. He's going to contest me. I'm waiting for the chat to blow up now. Him yelling at me.
He's furiously typing.
But it's like, yeah, it's a small enough car because the first gen XC90 is not a physically huge car, but like it's so not fuel efficient. And as far as like running errands, there are better vehicles, but it's such an emotional car. And the fact that I don't use it very much makes it that much better. That I'm like,
it's more special when you do decide,
exactly.
I'm going to get in and take it. I'm going to take it out for the weekend, or I'm going to, go do whatever with it.
I'm laughing because the chat is just clay now. I'm just fighting back.
Told you. I warned you all. For those who
it's
are
smaller
listening
than Outback in his defense.
For those who are listening and watching later, I apologize. Like, just... He is right. It's smaller than an Outback. It is a lovely city car from a size perspective. I will acquiesce on that.
But there's also just like the notion of, I think even if you had like really anything bigger than a smart car, there's the idea of, okay, I took this out to go get groceries or go to the gym. I have to park it at the gym, and then like, what do I do? And also, I think there's also, for me, a little bit like it's just extra steps. It's the same as if I'm going to ride my bike. I have to go to the bike room and get it out and make sure I've got my helmet, turn on the lights. I could just walk out the front door and use my feet.
Okay, well, now you're making me feel bad about the fact that I literally haven't touched my bike in the bike shed in almost 2 years.
Well, that's the same way because
I'm very busy driving a V8 XC90. Like, my bike doesn't make those noises.
Still. I just sold mine on Marketplace. So
oh well,
but you have a different kind of bike.
Given up.
You have a different kind of bike now. Like,
yeah, which is why I sold the one that I actually have to work when I ride. Like, but yeah. But can we use that as like an opportunity to know like what you have done and like your history in the industry? Because if I'm honest, like I didn't ask you when we were texting earlier because when I met you at like I know Cadillac, Hyundai, and then where are you now? Is it Lyft?
Lyft. I'm at Lyft.
Okay. But like there's clearly more to that story. Like there's clearly like
to quote one of the women who works at my PR agency now, I went over there right after I started at Lyft. I went over to the agency to like say hi and meet them, and I gave my background, and she goes, "Wow, you've lived a life. You lived a couple lives." And I'm like, can I drink in the workplace? Like, which I can right now. Oh, by the way, quick aside before I'll get into my history. I picked this wine tonight uh, because I was at my wine bar before this and had a white wine, so I had to stick with white. But I picked this one because it is actually from Virginia.
Oh,
Ooh.
And given that, Tyler, you live in Virginia now, and Jake, you are from Virginia, I was like, oh, this is an appropriate wine to drink tonight. It is very good. It's a Vermentino. It is from my wine club, which is Ardesia Wine Bar in New York. They ship their wine club. I'm plugging for that now. And we did um, unknown American wines one month, and that's where this is from. So,
well, I'm happy that you're enjoying it because most Virginia wine is not known for being very good.
It's
oh yeah, no, this is good. This
Okay,
is
well,
not your normal
text me
Virginia
what
wine.
this is later because I'll buy
I'll put
some.
it in the chat in a little bit.
Okay.
Uh, I guess I'll start current and go backward. Which way should I go? Yeah, I'll go backwards because I don't normally do that. So I'm at Lyft right now, the rideshare company. Lyft is one of the leading transportation companies in the US and through parts of Canada. We do rideshare and bike share. I oversee all of our consumer and partnership communications externally, so I get to talk about all of the fun stories around what we're doing, who our people are, what our partnerships are. So like we have great partnership with like Chase Sapphire Reserve and Delta and MasterCard and a bunch of fantastic professional sports teams like the new professional women's soccer team in San Francisco, Bay FC, as well as like the Phoenix Mercury, the Phoenix Suns, the venues they play at. Lots of fun stuff. So I get to talk about a lot of the fun stuff in the Lyft world. And I enjoy it because it's like transportation adjacent without being fully immersed in cars. I like having a hobby again, which I credit Jake and Tyler a lot for everything that Motorsports is and does that helped me rekindle my love for cars outside of work. Because before Lyft, I did PR for various automakers. I previously ran all of our external comms for Polestar in North America. So I got to launch Polestar 2 single motor, do the reveal for Polestar 3, a bunch of other stuff, helped take the company public, worked for Hyundai, as you mentioned, Tyler, while I was at a big PR agency. I worked for Hyundai, Genesis, Michelin, and Michelin BF Goodrich, Amazon Web Services, Capital One Auto Finance, MasterCard. And then before that, I led product and technology comms at Cadillac. Pretty much all the cars that are getting replaced right now are all, I replaced the cars that are getting replaced. I launched all the cars that are getting replaced. So, the final CTS, ATS, their V Series, ELR, K2 Escalade, XT4,
Oh, I just had an
Super
XT4.
Cruise.
Oh,
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
yes.
yeah.
Um,
Oh.
what else did I do? Before I was at Cadillac, I was a journalist. I was at Automobile Magazine. That was my last stop on the journalism train. Um,
See, I didn't know
uh,
that. That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah, I was at Automobile Magazine, so I'm moving to Michigan. I lived in Michigan for 5 years for work, half with Automobile, half with Cadillac before moving back to New York. Um, so I wrote and edited for them mostly online. I had a couple of stories in print. My byline was syndicated well on Motor Trend as well, so I know a lot of the folks over at Motor Trend. Um, I was a freelance journalist before I joined Automobile. I wrote for like a bunch of local papers in the New York metro area, mainly my hometown paper, the Rye Record, which is a tiny little paper. Um, uh, and during that time, I also worked for Epix, the movie channel, which is I think
Oh,
now called
yeah.
MGM Plus. I was employee number 12 of Epix, so I got to launch Epix, which is really cool. And I guess this isn't my very first job, but my first sort of real job was I oversaw all the production of the automotive networks for a startup called Next New Networks, most well known in our circles
Oh,
for FastlaneDaily.com, Garage419.com, who you might know the
so
host
that's
of,
how you
Matt
knew Matt.
Farah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And a couple other channels that I won't mention. Um,
I was just about to say, are
and
we allowed to talk about what happened with that whole situation? Or
I'm allowed. I was not personally involved in a lot of that. A lot of it was tangential. I can link to a video that Matt did explaining a lot of that, and I could one up Matt Marshall and pull out a wheel, which maybe I will after I finish this glass of wine, related to that, and I can tell that story. But my very, very, very first job, which I don't talk about a lot, but is I think appropriate to talk about here, is I worked as the database creator and organizer for a business friend of my father's, specific to his car collection. He has around 100-ish, 100 and change, classic Ferraris, Alfa Romeos, Oscars, Maseratis, mostly racing, but not all.
ooh,
So I created a database of, okay, what are your cars? Where are they? When did you buy them? How much do you pay? You know,
Where
like
are
I
they? Because
literally
you don't even
created.
know.
Well, at that time, he was in the process of building what his wife called the Garage Mahal,
Mm.
which was a 4 stories above ground, 2 stories below ground place to put all the cars. One of the below ground levels was a machine shop, I think. I don't totally remember. Um, but that was really fun. He has really an impressive collection. At Pebble Beach in 2014, I looked this up earlier today because I figured it would come up. When Maserati was celebrating their 100th anniversary, they were the featured mark at Pebble Beach.
Hmm.
A number of the cars that were the featured mark row along the cliffside at the Concours were his. Um,
Wow.
so he has a really, really spectacular collection. He's very quiet about it, unlike a lot of other collectors of his caliber who are very showy about who they are. He collects cars because he likes them, and he collects the
Right.
cars he likes, and it's so wonderful. And so for that to be my first job and to be around all of these amazing classic cars was so cool. Um, just because I love cars.
That's
did you
So
really
get?
fun.
that's
It sounds like
that's my background.
you had a lot of agency to kind of do what you wanted there, and be a leader, and
Well, it
kind of
was like
figure things out to make it work
understanding,
for him.
hey, oh, there's so I think of this pre-war Alfa Romeo, we would call it a red van now, right? It's kind of a shooting brake,
Mm.
wagony situation. I just remember it was gray, and I couldn't find any documentation on the car. And I had been told by my boss's brother, who helped maintain the collection, um, oh, oh no, sorry, I did not mean to do that. Sorry.
He's back.
My age is showing. I swear I know how to work video. Um, sorry, I had been told like, oh, go look in the car. We usually keep all the paperwork in the car if it's not filed. So I had to go and like find this pre-war Alfa Romeo shooting brake to find the paperwork, and then um, I got to like drive it around, like literally just like from over here to over there, which was like it was really cool. And like, imagine being I was oh God, I don't know, 20, and it was like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
just go move the car, and I got to drive
Said in the
a
same way that you would say, like, go move the Prius.
right.
Yeah.
He had a. It was rare he bought new cars, and he ended up with a Gallardo Spider when
Oh.
they were brand new. It was giallo, yellow with a deep blue roof and blue leather, manual. And I was like, oh, I've never driven a Lamborghini, and he and his brother were like, oh, just go take it for a spin. And so I went and I drove it. She's in Connecticut, so I drove it down the Merritt a few exits and back, and pushed it more than I probably should have. Um, but I was told, go have fun, go push it, don't get a ticket, and don't wreck it. And that was really fun. There's one car in his collection that I've always had a crush on, and I am praying and hoping that I'm in the will for this car. This gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous Ferrari 456 in deep forest green over buttery camel leather
Mm.
manual
Oh,
transmission. Still pop-up headlights, 456.
Hmm.
And I just like I dream of that car still frequently. It's so just so stunning. The V12 2+2, and that was the peak of Pininfarina's artful minimalism in my mind. Of like, there isn't a lot of frippery. We'd moved away from Testarossa and like the streaks. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, those are very, very pretty. They've
Yeah.
aged really well. I mean, they were pretty when they were new, but they've aged well.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a very long version of my history.
No, but
Um,
I love that.
Yeah.
Um, Donnie, I have shared your story of your one PR nightmare with the Escalade loan with many people when they want to know, what happens to these cars, because I've got a couple stories. Thankfully, I never damaged anything of yours that you loaned me. For those listening at home, Donnie gave me my second ever press car. It was a Hyundai Veloster N. Um, and then I don't know if you gave me anything else. Well, Genesis and Polestar later, but nothing else at
yeah.
Hyundai, I don't think. But I the Escalade story is a good story, but I'm curious if you have anything else that can top that.
Um, well, should I tell the Escalade story
I mean, you
quickly?
might
Should
as
I
well tell
like
the Escalade
okay.
story because I've teased it now.
So
But
there was a journal when I was a Cadillac. For those who don't know, part of the job of the PR people is to oversee the fleet of cars that go out to journalists, and that takes different forms at different automakers. But part of my job at Cadillac was overseeing that, and I had a journalist who I'm still very good friends with. I'm very good friends with his fiance, still to this day. And this journalist called me. I done a press loan of an Escalade, and calls me like 6 a.m. crying. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I went to go get my stuff out of the car. And I'm thinking, oh God, the car's gone. Um, and he's like, the wheels are all gone. And this is in Detroit.
It's
He has like secure parking. And I'd been to his apartment before. I was, like, it wasn't this like, oh God, a journalist got the wheels stolen off. It was like somebody who I was like, you know what you're doing. You're paying attention. And he was so upset. He was so upset. He was like, "Oh my God," he was beside himself. And I was like, "It's fine. Like, it's fine." So I got the fleet company, as I'm sure Jake has mentioned before. They're fleet services company that help actually like deliver the cars, pick up the cars, send the cars. So I got the fleet car. I was like, "Hey, do you guys have any extra wheels?" They're like, we have a set of Denali wheels." I was like, "Great, can you bring those and go pick up this Escalade?" Um, the wheels
bring
got
those in a
stolen.
wrench.
Like, and they're like, yeah, 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 we'll figure it out. We'll let you know. Like, we'll call you if there's any issue, because I'm thinking like it's probably on cinder blocks. Hopefully, it's on cinder blocks. And the caliper, like the brake calipers, aren't completely like screwed up. And they were able to pick up the car with the Denali, put the Denali wheels on it. It was fine, just missing four wheels. And like it just happens. Like, and it was something that I laughed really hard because I had fought internally at GM, and there will be some people who may watch this, maybe not, probably not, who will laugh at this story. But I fought internally. I was like, we need wheel locks on our Escalades. Um, and I was told, no, they look ugly. No, this is an extra cost. Is it worth it? And after that, I was like, we're putting wheel locks on all of our Escalades. Here's why. Because I had to go buy it. It was an Escalade Platinum. I had to go buy a new set of Platinum wheels. And like, listen, it's a company. It's a company. It's a business. Everything has a budget that it hits. There's line items for every budget. Um, and it wasn't a problem, but it was more comical of like, I told you we needed wheel locks.
that one
And
set of wheels was the cost of wheel locks for like the entire North
Right.
American press fleet.
exactly, like it
And the
was
thing
one of
I
these
find
like,
funny about that story, like as someone who has curbed wheels and then unfortunately driven two vehicles into things at this point, one of which is my fault, one of which was not. Um, I could understand. I'm thinking of myself if I were to walk outside, and I have secure parking. But if I walked outside and a car was gone entirely, I would be very concerned. I'd be upset. I'd probably assume it was towed and not stolen. But it would not shock me. It would just be a problem I had to deal with. And I would
and,
call whoever would figure it out.
and
If
that's
I
what it
came
is.
outside and the wheels were gone.
Yes.
I can't tell you how disorienting that would be to
I
have
feel
a hover Escalade.
this poor journalist. I mean, he is really really wonderful. He's a wonderful guy. He's an analyst now, and he just like I have to assume it was the same thing of like, wait, something's wrong. What? Like,
It's
and,
like you can't
and
process that.
yeah, and I've curbed wheel. I curbed wheels as a journalist. I've curbed wheels on my own press cars as a PR person over the years. I once put a hole in the lower grille of a Mazda 5 by accident. I was parallel parking. I didn't realize the car in front of me had a tow hitch, and
Oh no.
I just like it was the first time I'd ever done anything to a press car as a journalist, and like called the PR person, Jake, who like sobbing. And
Oh
she's like,
yeah.
it's fine, it's fine. Like all the cars are insured. Obviously, it's better if things don't happen to them. But
But like we'll get it
listen,
fixed.
things happen. Like yeah, we get cars get fixed. The cars are fine. Because you asked, do I have anything beyond that Escalade
Yeah.
story? Um, I ended up not being the one who really had to deal with this because of the severity. But we did have a journalist who was in the U.S. from out of the U.S. Roll a CTSV down, essentially down a mountain.
Oh.
And immediately we were like, is he okay? Do we need help with medevac? It was all about the person. And I think pretty much every automaker, every PR team, every person, I hope every person, maybe this is being too kind to the world, cares about people first.
Yeah.
Cars can be replaced. Cars can be fixed.
The cars are just assets.
Exactly. And even that is like making it maybe sound too heavy. It's like cars are things.
Yeah.
People cannot be replaced.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, we had a journalist who, and he didn't do anything wrong. The road was not well maintained. There was a problem, and it had not been repaired. Unfortunately, and he hit a spot that the road probably I think road should have been closed. That's my guess. Again, rose-colored glasses. Looking back all these years later, and he rolled a CTSV down a big hill, part of a
Wow.
mountain in California. And he was fine. He was totally fine. The car was not, but the car did its job.
Right. And that's just a different story at that point.
Yeah.
And
I encourage everybody to read. Many years ago, Jonathan Klein had an incident with a McLaren.
oh, I read it's a very good
It's a
read.
really, really great story, a really great piece that he did talking about McLaren and cars and what cars are really built to do and engineered to do. And
Yeah.
if everybody hasn't read that yet, I encourage you to read it.
We'll find the link and share that. It's a really good piece, and it, from what I remember, it got me really emotional. Because the summary for those who haven't read this is basically he got sent off the side of a mountain as a passenger in a McLaren on some sort of media event drive and lived to tell the tale after high speed, and it's a very good read. So yeah, we'll share that. But yeah, it's interesting, Donnie, that you bring that up because having just been on this Hummer drive, I was talking to someone else yesterday or this morning about this, where when we get on these events, and Tyler can speak to this, and Donnie, when you were on the media side of things, unless you know someone else there who's a fellow journalist that you talk ahead of time and say, oh, let's pair up and be a partnership, usually you're going to be paired with somebody to share a car for the event. And there are not a lot of great drivers out there. There are many fine drivers, and then there are many below fine drivers.
There are many people who think they are great drivers.
Correct.
Yes.
So, Tyler, I'm curious your experiences and thoughts.
It's it is interesting like for people who don't know, like you generally when you go on these drives, you're sharing the car with somebody. Like you have to find a partner early on. And am I disconnected now?
Uh-oh.
Oh, I thought
Did we
that
lose
alert
Tyler?
was saying my internet was unstable.
It said mine was
Mine,
unstable too.
Oh, I guess it was
no,
Tyler's.
it also said
Um,
mine was. Maybe it's.
well, I'll finish what he was saying
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
know
go for it.
I have an inkling, which is yeah, when you go on these drives, you're often paired with another journalist who are on the program. It's interesting because some automakers pair people together in advance, some don't, some let people pair off. Um, it really depends on the automaker and their preference and the team's preference and what the drive program looks like. And sometimes you get paired with people who you don't know or you don't know how they drive, and it can be it can be a little wild. Anybody in the Out Motorsports family who has ever been at a track event with me has probably heard me say, "Oh, I'm okay with riding along. I don't really ride along with people who I don't know how they drive or I haven't spent time on a track with." Because I've had a couple of experiences as well on track and on the street with folks who uh, I've had experiences. We'll leave it at
Yeah,
that.
yeah. People who, to your point, believed they were perhaps better drivers than they were.
Am I back
Yeah,
now?
I've thankfully not really had. I've just heard the stories more than had to deal with it myself. But the other half of this equation is not only the driver talent or lack thereof, it's also the fact that you're spending a day and a half with this other person, and you have to suddenly be friends. Like there is a
Yeah,
social element to it.
it's funny, and I'll say this, if I may, Jake, you understand this, and to everybody listening and watching, I'll add a little context. One of my very good friends who native born New Yorker, born in Brooklyn, has never had a driver's license. He's one of those people who, when you saw in a driver's ed card, you moved away very quickly from that car. Um, he once told me a story about how his mom, I think his mom asked him about like adjusting the mirrors, and he's like, "Oh, that's what that's for." So
Oh
never had a
no.
driver's license. He frequently says when you want to say something a little spicy, a little something, a little tea, you take a drink of whatever you're drinking, even if it's not alcohol. You take a sip and then you say, "Well, now that I'm drunk," and you say what you're going to say.
It's,
And now that I'm drunk, I'm not actually drunk, but um, there have been so many programs when I was on the OEM PR side where we would look at the media list who we wanted to invite and be like, can we just only invite people we like and just build a trip
Hmm.
of people who we want to be around for
Yeah.
3 days? We want to spend 2 days in a car with on a long haul flight with. Uh, Obviously, there's a lot of equation around publications and where the stories need to be placed and what is the program and what is the launch and what is the news and
Right.
blah blah blah, all the actual business crap. Um, but a lot of it comes down to who do we like? Who do I want to spend time with?
Right. Right. Yeah. And so Ryan in the chat asked if people respond well to criticism, related to these adventures, and I, from my point of view, and Donnie, you can back this up, but I'm assuming, once you've done the invite list and the people are there, it's now your job to give them a good time as best you can,
My
to a
res-
degree.
my response on that, I sort of have a multi-pronged answer to how do people respond well to criticism. I think first and foremost, people are people, and so people are going to respond to criticism how they're going to respond to it, regardless
Hmm.
of whether it's work related or not. Um, the point of we'll talk about a car launch. We're talking a lot about car launches. The point of a car launch is to showcase the vehicle, a new vehicle that's often not on sale, in the best possible way. Whatever best means, whether you want to showcase a specific feature like the Hummer drive you went on, Jake, of showcasing the off-road chops, or you want to showcase a car on track because of its track prowess. You want to showcase that. Do people take well to criticism of you are not good at showcasing the car doing that? That's not really something that has ever come up, at least for me in my career. I will be honest, I generally try to be a straight shooter. This will sound cliche, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, oh, that's not true. The number one rule of doing PR, as Eddie Monsoon would say from Ab Fab, PR, sweetie, darling, I PR things, I PR. um, is you always tell the truth. You never lie.
Yeah.
You are the expert. You tell the facts. And if you don't know, you say you don't know. And so you don't end up with a lot of criticism around like, oh, you're a bad driver. It's, hey, we're doing a track day and we have our engineers here who use this track to tune the chassis for the car. Would you like to ride along with one of our engineers to understand just how they tuned in exactly the way the suspension works in the track mode because we use this track to tune it. It's like, it's less of a, okay, you're bad at driving on a track, please stop it. It's more of a, let us help you and you'll also help us.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair way to put it. I I went to pit race for the Corvette Z06 launch two Septembers ago, and they had Taj was there, the lead engineer for the car, among others. I know Tyler wanted to mention him briefly, but they had a lead follow exercise on the track, and it was one that they had used to develop the chassis a bit. But they had us go out in groups of three behind the lead car with some sort of pro driver or test driver or something, and he was kind of observing us and our driving, and then they put us into new groups based on our skill sets, based on our perceived skill sets, and then they also talked to us ahead of time about our skills. So there was me and one other where they just said, you all can go, which I was frankly astonished by because that
Why?
was a lot to just hand
Jake,
us the keys.
you literally race cars for fun, like pro am. Why are you surprised?
Because I don't know, I was one of the first, I was on the first wave of this program, and I just didn't, it was
Yeah.
fascinating to me that they were just like, yeah, have this
Am I back
six-figure
enough that people can hear me
quasi-supercar
yet?
and like go enjoy it for half an hour. Don't wreck it. And then I like slid it through turn one completely sideways in front of Taj and all the others because I very much overestimated how much speed I could carry through that turn.
But did you
But
hit anything?
I did not. When I got
Fair.
back in, Taj looked at me and he said, "Well, it looks like it fun."
Well, I mean,
I said, "Yeah,
that's
I
the
did."
thing. That's the thing. So the automotive industry, I have to say, there are a lot of people in the industry who do it because they love cars, because it's fun, or they've gotten into the industry and they've learned that it's fun.
Yeah,
Um, it's been really interesting in my current job, and I hope this doesn't come across as shade to anybody in my current job, but I've gotten asked of like, oh, what's a really fun thing you've done before? What's a really cool event? And I'm like, well, I've driven on a lot of racetracks. I flew a car over the Hudson River. I went to Dubai Fashion Week. I did team building in Sweden. I've done fun stuff, right? And the industry is really fun for that. And this is coming from somebody who started right when the industry was like bottoming out.
right.
Like I started in the automotive industry in 2000, we'll call it like 2007, 2008. So it was like I got my first sort of real big boy job in the industry as everybody was going bankrupt. Oh, Tyler, your fan is very, very loud.
Oh no.
Tyler's back. Tyler, turn your gain down or something.
From my side, I was back the whole time. It really is struggle bus over here. How about now?
Oh, that's better.
Better?
Yeah,
That's better.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yay, okay.
Um, yeah, I've
Anyway,
done fun things. I was talking what I was talking about helicopters and fashion weeks and yeah, it's a lot of fun in the industry. And one thing I'll mention, we don't need to talk about it now. We can come back to it. Um, Jake, you and I were talking over text last week or 2 weeks ago about how there's a lot of overlap between the alcohol and spirits world and the automotive world as far as people and their career trajectories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it makes sense because it's a very similar standpoint from an experiential world. Um, there are things that you can tell somebody until you are blue in the face about what it is like, what it tastes like, feels like, drives like, whatever. If you don't do it yourself, you don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this came up actually with my drive partner at the Hummer event. We were talking about the rise of AI, and that's like an entire conversation. But the point that I made to him is that it, regardless of your thoughts on AI, I do think AI is going to change some things, especially in the media world, for better for worse. Take your own stance on that. But what I don't think AI can ever do is replicate the storytelling of being there, experiencing the thing. Because AI could write a story about the specs of the Hummer EV. AI cannot write the story about what it felt like when I did X, Y, and Z and then was staring 27 degrees straight down.
It's interesting because I think about auto shows, which that's again, that could be a whole nother hour podcast. There is something that you cannot replicate of going and sitting and touching and feeling a car or
Right.
test driving a car. Like whenever anybody asks me, and I have to assume everybody else, the two of you, everybody else listening, has the same experiences. Somebody's like, I want your advice on cars. You're like, here's your top three. Go test drive them.
Yeah.
That's like, do you feel comfortable driving it? If you don't buy it.
Yeah. And I say it in my videos. I think Tyler said the same thing, where especially when it comes to how you fit behind the wheel, your take on the seat comfort and everything, every body is different. So I can tell you what it's like to fling it down a back road, do whatever you wouldn't normally do on a 15-minute test drive, where you may not get the opportunity. But what you can do on a test drive is take 10 minutes to get in the driver's seat, make sure you're completely well adjusted, and like see if you even think the seat feels good. See if you can reach the steering wheel comfortably. Can you see out of it? That sort of stuff.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's different for everybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
my aunt just was looking for new cars and I was like, I gave her like all the German things to look at because that's just what I would do. And she wound up in a Lexus. She was like, "Oh, all the seats on the German cars are just too hard. Like that's just
Yep.
not what I like. That's just what I mean." And so like no matter what, like something that we like just might not be what other people like. Like at the end of the day, it all comes down to personal taste, and you don't know that until you touch things and feel things, and there's a tangible aspect to everything that
Well,
like
and that's the other thing is like when you talk about cars in particular, and this is gonna sound silly, this goes for refrigerators as well. I reference that because I had an old boss who for many years was like, he talked about really liking working for somebody, and he was like, I would work for them even if we were selling refrigerators. And so I've always sort of thought of that. It's tangible. Like you can be told, you can see pictures, you can see videos and 3D renderings and whatever, whatever, whatever. The way you interact with it is physical in this world. I am not interacting with my refrigerator or my car through my computer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's an element to of validity to all of that with I think anything that is a physical good, whether it's an appliance or I'm staring at my shoes in the hallway. You take a gamble if you buy a pair of shoes online and don't try them on first.
And if I may make a plug for my current employer, that is our mission is we want to get people out into the world with each other. We don't want people being at home. We want
Yes, no,
people
no more of
no
these.
more loneliness. Like get out in the world. That's like honestly, that's Lyft's mission, and that's part of why I'm there is because it's about interacting with people, and it's something I personally care a lot about.
Yeah, I mean, community's a big deal, and I think too, in a, I hate saying post-COVID because like COVID is still a thing. It's just not as quite as scary for most people as it was before. But in our current world, I think we have adapted for better or for worse. And I love working from home for a lot of reasons, but unless I make a point of leaving the house for lunch or to go to the gym or making evening plans, I don't see other humans.
yeah.
And that you take that for what you will, but I can just be in this little box all day and like, that's
Wait,
not
you
always a
mean
good
like
thing.
this doesn't count?
This is no, this counts. This counts. At some point, I would like to cheers with a drink and like give people hugs and whatever. Like there's a difference, and I'll call a lift to do it.
Okay.
Because if I'm consuming copious amounts of alcohol, or even
Don't drive.
non-copious amounts, I'm not going to drive.
Don't try. Yeah, it's just funny the overlap between the number of people I know who work for like AB InBev and Anheuser-Busch who do cars and have done car things. It cracks me up. And you both know from being on press trips of how much the alcohol flows, but in very specific ways of like, it is dinner, you are going to bed after this. Like,
Yeah.
it's so funny how much the two intersect despite being almost adversaries in most people's lives.
It was funny at the Hummer event. One of our friends and girlies and members is on the agency side that works on different GM things, and he was there, and he's a friend of mine, so like we're chatting, and this was the final wave of 3 or 4, and everyone's exhausted on their end. They're ready to go home, and so I'm like, tell like, what are we doing this whole thing? This is on Friday, and he goes, yeah, well, y'all are gonna be up for breakfast at 7. We are wheels up to leave here at 8 a.m. This is all shutting down at 9 p.m. tonight. Like, we are going to bed. Whatever you choose to do is up to you. But the GM people are done.
That was the point I was going to bring up is how much of that transition is out of like necessity, where like they're like,
Having
okay.
been the PR person who was often the last one up, never the first one up. Yeah, there is a point in which you're like, all right, I'm done with Groundhog Day.
Right.
It's time.
Yeah.
Oh, actually,
I know some big programs have been like 5 or 6 waves, and that seems very long.
I did a program. For
the folks at home, the wave talk. When these programs happen, these events happen, the invites will be sent out for different chunks of a week generally. So I might fly in Monday, drive all day Tuesday. Donnie flies in Tuesday to drive Wednesday. Tyler flies in Wednesday to drive Thursday. They're putting on the same show, the same dog and pony show, 3 times. So it's the same restaurants, the same dinners, the same bars, the same drive routes.
No, not the same dinners. There was always at least I did this. There was always an A dinner and a B dinner. So you had 2 different types of dinners.
Okay.
But yes, yeah, it's generally like everybody who is supporting the program, who is not a journalist coming to drive and test drive the car, they come in earlier. So if the program is, Monday to Friday, you get there Saturday and you leave Saturday. And yeah, you give the same presentation over and over again, and you eat the same dinner over and over again, and you have the same conversation over and over again. Oh, what did you think of the car? Oh,
How was the drive?
How was the drive? Oh, did you have travel issues getting in? I know there were storms. Yeah. You have it over and over. Like, there was one launch I went on. God, no, I'm trying to remember what launch it was. An ELR. Whatever launch, early in my Cadillac years, where it was a longer program. And we got to the end, and like the marketing person knew the design presentation knew the engineering presentation, and the engineering knew market. It was like, should we just switch? Let's just switch. We all know it.
Just tell them that you're the lead engineer for the car, whatever.
And there was a running joke for a long time when I was at Cadillac. Where my team would always try and make me laugh by the end of the program. They would try and do something during like an inopportune moment, the presentation, dinner, something like where they would make me like just lose my shit and have to walk out of the room because I'm laughing so hard. And I remember this is the one that sticks with me the most. It was at the ATSV launch at Circuit of the Americas in Austin. And our chief engineer had been talking about a lot of the stuff they had done involving aero for the vehicle, for it to be able to accelerate faster, hit faster top speeds, just general like lower coefficient of drag, that kind of stuff. And like that also helped with letting a lot of the fluids within the engine flow, because if I remember correctly, there was something in the rear that was lubricated with oil from the front, and there was a trans oil line, and I don't remember. Anyway, so he would talk about how there was a smooth laminar flow, which has to do with aero, but affects some of the movement of the internal components. And we got to the final wave, the final group of media, and I think we had been there for like, Tyler, what's going on over there?
I'm really struggling. My earphone just popped out of my ear, like without any warning.
Sorry to everybody who's listening later. So anyway, we get to the last wave, the last group, and I feel like we had like 4 or 5 waves. Yes, it was 5 waves because we added an extra wave for influencers. So we had all of our like automotive journal, like hardcore, they know how to drive on a track, and this was the last wave. This was the wave of the people who were like, we're going to drive them really slow on the track. We're going to do something different. We're going to like go to a barbecue place instead of like more hardcore driving, like that group. And the chief engineer gets up. He's giving his presentation. He makes some comment about smooth laminar flow. And one of the people on my team, who I still remember who it is to this day, I will not name them, just leans over and whispers in my ear, smooth laminar flow. I lost my shit. I had to run out of the room, like literally run out of the room because I could not hold it together. Absolutely. And like this, every automaker, every team has this kind of shit happen. Every program.
I mean, it's how you keep it fun.
Like
there's no other way.
Kind of like slap happy by the end of these.
Oh, completely, because it's it's like you are up so late or so early or both, and you're constantly turned on. You're like constantly having the like, how are you conversation? Oh, tell me what you think. Oh, do you need anything? The like, you are turned on. On top of having to be a person, having to know all your data, having to know all your facts, and also, like go drive a car on a track or on a street, or ride along with somebody who maybe you don't know if they're a great driver. And so you just get to the end of the week and you're like, I can't. It was that Austin trip, that ATSV trip, I lost it a couple of times. It was smooth laminar flow. We were driving back from Coda to the hotel, and we had a dinner that night, and I was driving back with my coworker, and we were talking about like, okay, we're done with the track, we're done with that being out in the boonies. For anybody who's been to Coda, you understand it's like it's not in Austin, it is out of Austin.
It's a ways.
And we're sitting at a traffic light, and a guy on a horse just like trots by, and we're like, we like completely lost it laughing, and the cars behind us like started honking because the light had changed, and we couldn't pull ourselves together. We were laughing so hard because we were totally slap happy, and we're like, where are we? What is going on? And then I don't remember why this had come up that trip, but this is super random. I hate wedge salads. Okay. I hate wedge salads in a restaurant because it's not a salad. You are asking me to do the work to make a salad. And this had come up at some point in maybe picking menus or I don't know what. And so it's the last day that we're all together. Like all the journalists are gone. Most of the team is gone. It's just like the core event people. And I come downstairs in the hotel to meet the team, and sitting there waiting for me is a wedge salad. And I was just like, I hate you all. I hate you all.
Now I know to offer you a wedge salad the next time we see each other.
Oh, please don't. Nicole is right. Wedge salads are lazy.
Hey. All right. Well, we've been on longer than planned, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I feel like we do this another 3 times.
Yeah.
But alas, we should probably call it for this one. But thank you, Donny, for entertaining us and sharing some of your tales.
My pleasure. I have a lot. Yes. I have a lot of stories. If you both or other folks would have me back, I will come back at a later point.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, we would love to have more of these stories because these are so entertaining.
I love hearing them, and we'll have to do it over a second bottle of Virginia wine, I guess.
Yes.
Or wine from elsewhere. You know what? Next time, I'll get a bottle of wine from Mexico, and I will tell stories about Mexico.
That sounds great. I'm already intrigued. For those who are curious about the Hummer Drive, that goes live at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So head over to your favorite YouTube channel. It starts off with some obnoxious, awkward straight man yelling and asking where all the chicks were. So
only fitting for a Hummer Drive sometimes, I feel like.
We happen to capture that on video, so I just put that at the very start to shame him because I really hated hearing that. But anyway, it was a fun trip. Then we've got a bunch of events coming up, so go sign up for those and come to them, because it'll be conversations like this and giggle fits and wedge salads, and it'll be so much fun.
A lot of Donnie's there. There will be wedge
salads. I shouldn't have told
salads.
that story. God damn it.
Donnie, I'm going to make sure, just for you, whatever event you come to of ours next, I'm going to make sure we have wedge salad just for you.
All right. I'll throw it at Ryan if he's there. I see him talking about weaponizing it in the chat, so...